Okay. Good morning, everyone. Shavua Tov, and welcome to our Parsha class, Parsha Vayera, the fourth Parsha of the Torah. We continue with the story of Avraham, of Abraham. And this week, he's not Avram, but he's Avraham. We added the H, we added the Hey to his name last week. And the scene opens up. Avraham is 99 years old. He's 3 days post his circumcision, his bris.
Most painful day.
We are told it's the most painful day. Someone just recently, I did a bris last week in the North Shore, and she asked me, "Oh, so is the third day going to be the hardest?" So I said, honestly, in infants, as a mohel, I don't actually see it. Perhaps it's more for adults. Um,
Today, but not at night. Isn't that crazy?
um, Definitely for Avram, it was the most painful day. 3 days after his bris.
Anyway, the rabbi's on, but I'm listening and I'm talking.
Why is he
I just
restless?
walked out in a minute.
But it was
Why is he restless? Because Abraham loves to do what? To
well,
host, to welcome guests. He can't sit. Um, some of us could really identify with him. Some of us are thinking, come on, get some rest. What's the big deal? You have some peace and quiet for a few days. Nish geferlech, as they say in Yiddish. But Abraham wasn't like that. Abraham was saying, no, I got a host. So Abraham takes his chair and he sits right outside his tent. Now, Avram built a very unique type of tent. He wanted to make sure that he's able to see people coming from all different directions. So he had not just one opening to this tent, but he had four different openings in each direction. There was a doorway, so people that coming from any direction, they don't even have to like turn around. Like sometimes people come to my house, like, "Where's the main entrance?" so, so everyone knows how to get in. Um, Job, I believe, Eos had that type of tent. But Hashem told Eov, "You're not as great as Avraham, because you sat inside, waited for guests. Avraham actually took his chair and sat outside, and he was so eager to pull in some guests to his tent. However, someone else wasn't interested in Avram hosting that day. That was God. Hashem said, Avram, today's not the day. Today you got to rest up. You're sick, you're weak, you had a bris. Take it easy today. But he knew that there's going to be guests roaming the streets. Avram's going to be busy. So what did Hashem do? We are told that Hashem made it an extremely, extremely hot day. It was like a typical day in New Orleans. He took the sun, we are told, out of its shell. I'm not sure what that means scientifically, but it was a very, very hot day. And no one was walking. Even the local Arabs who were used to the heat of the desert, they weren't traveling. People stayed home. And so Avram was there, and he was very disappointed. But someone else came to visit him. God Himself came to visit him. Right? So imagine that you have a God. I'm not sure what it means that came to visit. He was speaking to him. He was there. He felt His presence. And Avram is, I'm sure he's very happy. He has this opportunity to be visited by God. I want to read the first few verses of the Parsha that talks about this visit and what happened. As we know, the angels came and how Avram took care of them. Before we get to reading this inside, just to kind of give a very general overview of the Parsha, is that we know that these three guests were the angels came and they promised Abraham and Sarah that they'll have a child the next year. They also came to heal Abraham, and they also came to do this mission just down the block in Sodom, where there was a very wicked uh, society going on over there. Avraham's nephew Lot was stationed over there. He was living over there. So they came to destroy Sodom and Amorah, and at the same time to rescue Lot and his family. And there's a great detail of how this happened, and they came, and what happened to the guests while they were in their home, and how all the Stomites wanted to stone them and kill them, and how they eventually, very dramatically, saved Lot and his family. Um, and we have the story how Lot and his daughters, they thought that the whole world was destroyed and they're the only ones left. And what's going to be to humanity? There's not going to be any children, any left if we don't have children ourselves. So therefore, the two daughters of Lot slept with their father, and they both got pregnant. So that story is in this week's Parsha as well. And the story of Abraham, when he heads south after the destruction of Sodom. He heads south and he goes to a place called Gerar. And over there, again, there's an incident with the king of Gerar. Last time was Pharaoh of Egypt. This time it's Avimelech of Gerar taking Sarai, and a similar incident where he was punished and eventually she was let out. And then we have the story of Yitzchak's birth. Yitzchak is born. Avraham is 100 years old, and they give him a bris. And the final chapter of the parsha is the final test. As we know, he was tested 10 times. The test of the Akedah, of the binding of Isaac. That's the conclusion of the parsha. So that's a little bit of an overview of the parsha. And next week we continue the story of really how Sarah passes away and kind of focusing already on Isaac, on Yitzchak, his marriage, etc. We're going back to the beginning of the parsha. Okay, let's read this inside. We're on page 94, chapter 18, verse 1. Vayera elav Hashem be'eloini Mamre. God appears to Abraham in the plains of Mamre. So God was doing this mitzvah of visiting the sick. Abraham was sitting at the opening of the tent, and it was in the heat of the day. Like we said before, that God specifically made it very, very hot, and Abraham was still sitting outside, hoping to find some guests. And lo and behold, Vayar, he lifts his eyes and he sees. Vehine shloisha anoshim. There are three men, or three people that at least looked like men, nitzavim alav, that were standing right there. So, what will you do? Now, you can say God is appeared to Abraham. But let's not talk about a God. Let's talk about our spouse. Imagine you're on the phone with your spouse. Or let's say you're on a date. Okay, you're on a date. And then you see someone down the block that is collecting for an organization. I'm collecting some money for this organization. We help the orphans. We help this. We help that. And you say, okay, give me a couple of minutes. How's your spouse going to feel about that? Like now? I mean, come on, you can do it later, right? You get the number. This is our time together, right? We schedule this. We spent, this is months and weeks, and we planned this, and we cleared our schedules and our calendars. Now we're time together. Come on, like we can do this later. Avram is being visited by God himself. I think it's pretty special, right? And suddenly he sees three people that they're in the distance and they're walking down the street. So what does Avram do? Vayar, he sees them. Vayorot likrosam, and he ran towards them. Mi pesach oil, he left the opening of the tent and he ran to them. Vayishtachu arsa, and he bowed on the ground to them. Avraham knew something, and we learned this from today, that hachnosas orchim, the mitzvah of hosting guests, is more important than even being in the presence of God. Kabbalah's Prei Shechina. If God himself is there with you, it's more important to tell God, hold it. Give me a minute. There's a click on the phone, right? Hold it. I got to run and get some of the guests what they need. That's how important hosting guests is. Now, the Rebbe in the talk once asked, well, how did Avram, we know this because Avram did it, so we trust Avram. He knew that it's more important to host guests than to be with God. But how did Avram know this? How did he know that he should? So one of the answers given is that Avram realized that's very hot. And he knew why it's so hot. It was it was a lot hotter than usual. He realized that God made this so hot that he shouldn't have to host guests. Now, in addition to that, God also came to visit him. Now, if God's visit was enough to deter him from hosting guests, why did it also have to be very hot? In other words,
wasn't sufficient.
oh, obviously it wasn't sufficient. I mean, if it was sufficient, if God hosting him was the priority over here, so there could have been 1,000 people walking in the streets, but God could have visited Avraham, and like that, he wouldn't have to host any guests. But from the fact that God also made it very hot, Avraham concluded that it must be that God's visit itself is insufficient enough to deter him from hosting guests. So it must be that hosting guests are more important than God's visit. So this is how important the idea of hosting guests is. So what does he do? Verse 3, Vayomar, and he says, Adonai, which means either means God's name, or it means my Lord, right? My master. Well, who is he referring to? Who is he talking to over here? And what he says is, Imna matzasi chen beinach, if I have found favor in your eyes, al nasa avar me'al avdecha. Don't pass by your slave, your servant. Who's he talking to?
The angels, visitors.
So there's actually two ways of understanding this. Either he's talking to the angels, says, "My lords, angels, people." Or he thought that they were people. Please don't just pass by. Don't just continue walking. Please come in. Another interpretation is he's talking to God. He says, "Please wait here for a second while I do something more important." Right? And there's actually a difference in this word. Is it God's name? Is it a holy name of God, or is it a mundane name of talking to other people? Right? Are we talking to God or talking to people? It's actually in halacha. You can say there's a difference between, the way we treat God's name in the Torah, how we write it, do we erase it, or things like that. Or so, is it talking to God? God, please hold while I go visit the guest, or I deal with the guest, or it's talking to the guest saying, please don't walk by, please come in. Okay, so that's verse 3. Verse 4, and he tells them, please take some water and wash your feet. And come and sit under the tree in the shade. He thought that they were local Arabs, which were all basically idol worshippers, and he assumed that their feet was because of their worship. They had dirty feet, and therefore he did not want to bring that into his house. He said, first, wash your feet and then come in. I'm going to bring some bread for you. You'll be able to satiate yourself, and then you can continue going, because this is the reason why you're even here. And they said, yes, they accepted the invitation. We will do as you have said. And right away, Avraham runs quickly into the tent, and which Sarah is there. And he says, please, quick, prepare the flour for the loaves of bread. And then in verse 7, it says that Avraham ran and got 3 bakar, 3 cattle, 3 cows, or bulls, whatever it was. Why do you have to take 3 of them? Or that they were actually calves. There were 3 ben bakar. They were young. Rach v'toiv. They were calves, tender and good calves. Why did he take 3? Well, one's not enough for 3 people. Each one has to eat a whole calf, because he wanted to give each one what he thought was the best piece of meat. What's the best piece of meat?
Apparently the tongue.
The tongue. Exactly. The tongue. So he wanted to each one give it. Yeah, have you eaten the tongue before?
Never.
I think at Kosher Occasion they sell tongue.
Good, yeah.
It's very. I mean, it just feels off, right? Like you can't imagine yourself eating it, but it's very tender. It's very soft. When I was living in New York, I had a friend whose father was a shochet who would prepare, and he would bring sometimes some meat home for himself, like take from the slaughterhouse some meat for himself, and he would prepare it at home and serve it. And he would always come home for like Yom Tov. He would bring tongue, so we always knew like, Simchas Torah, we're going to go to this house because they're the house of tongue. The house of tongue. Anyway, so Avraham wanted each of the guests to have their own piece of tongue. So he actually went and prepared 3 separate calves. And he gave it to the young lad, which was referring to his son Yishmael, and he did this very quickly. And he gives them He also gives them some cheese, some butter, some cream, some milk, right? And the big question is, how could he give them cheese and milk and dairy and meat? How does this work? Avram kept the Torah even before it was given, which is a big, big discussion, which is interesting actually, because today we have some different customs, but we don't mix meat and milk. Not only don't we eat it together, we also don't eat it
Within
a certain amount of time. So if I eat meat, how long do we wait before we eat dairy? So different customs. Some wait 3 hours, some wait 6 hours. Right? You're supposed to wait a number of hours.
But you can eat dairy
We do
first.
6 hours after meat before we eat dairy. If I eat dairy, how long do I wait before I eat meat?
You just have to clean the table.
So there's different customs. Our custom is, which is actually based on, it's actually a Kabbalistic idea, which is not so much halachic, that we wait a full hour. Some people wait 30 minutes, but like the basic halacha is that you actually don't have to wait any time. As long as you clear the table, you rinse your mouth well, rinse your mouth out, and your hands are clean, then you're able to go straight to meat, right? So from meat, the idea is that meat has a much stronger taste in your mouth. Meat also often gets stuck in between your teeth, so therefore you're supposed to wait a longer amount of time. But from dairy, as long as your mouth is clean, your hands are clean, the table's clean, you can go to meat. The custom today is most people wait at least 30 minutes in between, and some people wait a full hour. So what did Avraham serve first? He didn't want to serve the meat first, because then they'll have to wait. So he first served the dairy. That was like the appetizer. And then they washed their mouths, they cleaned up, and then he served the meat. Okay, so then it continues talking about what they said. They spoke to Sarah. They gave her their promise that they're guaranteed that the next year they'll have a son. But then we discussed that for a while, and then they leave. They leave to go to Sodom, right, to do what they have to do over here. So I want to just jump to verse 16 on page 101, verse 16. God said, "Vayakumu." I'm sorry. Vayakumu misham ha'anashim. The angels got up from there. Vayashkifu upnei Sodom, and they gazed upon Sodom. And wants to say, Avram went with them to escort them. Right? He escorted them out. That's the story of the beautiful story of Avram hosting guests. And then what happened was he actually went back to God. God was still waiting there. And he started praying to God, praying on behalf of the wicked people of Sodom, hoping and praying that maybe God could find it within him to save them, which obviously we know it did not work, but that's the story, right? In verse 23, you see how Avram basically approaches God and continues the conversation. Now, it's a beautiful opening to the Parsha. It's probably the most descriptive mitzvah being done by someone in the Torah, to see, so many verses describing Avram's doing this beautiful mitzvah of hachnasat orchim, of hosting the guests. But what's interesting about this is if we turn to Maimonides, where Maimonides codifies every mitzvah, and just to see how he describes this mitzvah, like what is the most important point of this mitzvah, right? If I had to ask you, before we read this inside, if I have to ask you, hachnasat orchim, right, hosting guests, what is the most beautiful part of the story of Avram? Which points stand out?
Walking them, escorting them.
Walking, escorting them.
Right.
Okay, what else? Leaving God in order to get to them, yeah.
There's so many different things
Right.
in this Parsha. I mean, even you're introducing a dietary
To this, yeah, I mean, as part of hosting guests, making sure that they'll be comfortable with what to eat first, what to eat second, which is, I guess, on a broader sense, asking your guests what they want to eat. Do you have a specific diet? What do you like? Things like that. I mean, the fact that he went so out of his way to get them the best meat and do it quickly and it's a beautiful host, right? I would have loved to be hosted by Avraham. And we know he continued this. He went down to the south and he pitched a tent and he called it the Eshel, Aleph Shin Lamed. Eshel can either mean a tree that he built, like he planted these trees to have like the shade, or Eshel can mean like a tent. He built this beautiful tent. But Eshel is actually also an acronym. The three Hebrew letters of Aleph, Shin, Lamed, Eshel stands for Achila, Shtia, no, Achila, Shtia, and Lina, which means food, drink, and partying and sleeping. So he had a full what's called a bed and breakfast, right? The first bed and breakfast. You're able to sleep, you're able to eat on the side of the road, and that's what he was, right? Till today, a lot of the organizations that deal with guests, with hosting people, they call themselves Eshel, because this is like going back to Avram, the idea of Samsandi, one of the hotels is called Eshel. I mean, there's a lot of organizations in Israel, Eshel. If you people that are coming to Miron for Lag BaOmer, there's tens of thousands of people coming to visit. So anything that they provide, they call it the Eshel, right? It's people providing for people who are visiting. So it's like everyone's we learned so much from Avram. But as to what Jill pointed out, the last part that he escorted them out, right? I mean, this seems to be a small detail. Okay, so before he left, here, let me walk you to the door, or let me walk you to the car. But the Maimonides, the Rambam, touches upon this and says, this is what hosting guests is really all about. So I want to read this inside. This is from his book, the last book of the 14 books of the Mishnah Torah of Maimonides. He says like this: it is a positive commandment of rabbinic origin to visit the sick, to comfort the mourners, and to prepare for a funeral, prepare a bride, and accompany guests. Okay? He doesn't say hachnasat orchim, which means to take in guests, to host guests. The way he refers to this mitzvah it's the mitzvah of accompanying guests. So accompanying them is the name of the mitzvah, according to Maimonides. And then when he describes it in the next halacha, he says there's a great reward for accompanying guests, and it's greater than all other kindnesses. This is a statute which Avraham, our patriarch, instituted, and the path of kindness which he would follow. He would feed wayfarers, provide them with drink and accompany them. Showing hospitality for guests surpasses receiving the divine presence, as states, as he saw, and behold, there were three people. Accompanying them is greater than showing them hospitality. Our sages said, whoever does not accompany them is considered as if he has shed blood. Right? So the way he describes the whole mitzvah, and that's it, right? There's one halakha talking about the mitzvah of hosting guests. He doesn't even talk about hosting. He mentions, yeah, you got to feed them, you got to eat, but it's really about accompanying them. It's about lilavot, to accompany them, to escort them, which is a nice thing, but like, is that really what the mitzvah is all about? Like, if I have this beautiful, today, the people who really go above and beyond in their hospitality. People build today special guest rooms that have just all the amenities. It's just beautiful. They have food galore. They have the most comfortable beds. They have everything that they need. They stock. I was me and Chaimushka, we stayed in someone's house a few months ago, and they have a guest room, and they have a whole refrigerator just for guests in their guest room with a nice coffee stand and the most comfortable, like a couch and beautiful beds just for the guests, right? I mean, it's a beautiful thing, right? There's so many things you can do to make your guests feel comfortable. But Maimonides doesn't focus on that. Maimonides focuses on accompanying them. Did you escort them out? Like, why is that so important? And we see Avram did it, but like, is that really more than running out and bringing them in, and more than getting the best food for them, and more than sitting and schmoozing with them and making them feel comfortable? Like, it's really about escorting them,
because that brings completeness to the mitzvah. Because otherwise, okay, you can go.
Yeah,
But it's showing
yeah. It's time's up. Yeah.
But it's
So
showing that you care, you bring them in, you take care of them, and you escort them out, that the whole thing is part of a package.
escorting them brings it shows what it was all about. It's a great point. So before we get to Lance's point, some of the commentaries say it's a very technical thing. It's a technicality because back in the day, people who came to visit, they didn't know the roads, they didn't know exactly where to go, and there was a lot of danger on the roads, right? If I, God forbid, went down the wrong path, whether it was wild animals, whether it was bandits, or whatever it wasn't so simple. So if I'm not a local, I don't know where to go, when to go. So I need someone to help me. So it was so important to escort your guests, to accompany them, to show them where to go, make sure they have the right directions. And that's why my mom really said that if you don't do it, it's as if you shed blood because very possibly people will get hurt because of the lack of knowledge of the roads. So that's a very technical answer. It doesn't really explain why this is like the main mitzvah, but okay. But really, the Rebbe points out something very similar to what Lance was saying, that accompanying guests really brings not just more than completion, but it really shows the guests what the idea of hosting by the host was really all about. Because really, there are two separate mitzvahs over here. One mitzvah is the mitzvah of tzedakah. What's the mitzvah of tzedakah? A person has a need, a person has a lack, there's a void. Someone needs money, not necessarily even financial tzedakah, but someone needs something, and you're there to provide it, to fill that void, right? Talking about financial tzedakah, there's even a discussion whether I could do tzedakah unintentionally. So what happens, for example, if I'm walking down the street and by mistake, a $20 bill falls out of my pocket and I'm unaware of it. But someone who is in need finds that money and is able to buy themselves breakfast. Did I fulfill the mitzvah of tzedakah? So we say you did the mitzvah. Why? Because ultimately your money went to help a poor person. Now, the fact that I didn't know about it, okay, but you still did the mitzvah. Now, even if I do know about it, if I do it with a frown, say, here's the money, take it. Did I do the mitzvah of tzedakah? Yes, I did the mitzvah of tzedakah. Why? Because ultimately, I helped another person with their need. But that's tzedakah. Then there's another whole mitzvah of hosting guests. It's maybe a byproduct of tzedakah, but it's a separate mitzvah. And what's the mitzvah of tzedakah? It's not just to give them what they need. You need a place to sleep, I'll give you a bed to sleep. You need some food, I'll give you some food. That's really a very technical mitzvah, the mitzvah of tzedakah. Someone needs something, you give it to them. But this mitzvah of hosting is much more than just giving someone what they need. It's about making them feel worthy, making them feel at home. It's about the person. It's not about their needs, it's about the person. People are trapped. People are uncomfortable. They're not themselves. In general, people like to be givers more than takers. So many people feel uncomfortable being a guest in someone else's house. So your job is not just to give them what they need, but to make them feel important, make them feel comfortable, make them feel at home. They say the story where there were two very wealthy businessmen. They were Jews, religious Jews, and they were traveling, and their flight got canceled or whatever it was. They ended up being stuck in some city for Shabbos, and they didn't have time to check into the hotel. They didn't have where to go, so they went to the community, and they told them, "Hey, go to this guy's house. He'll be happy to host you." So they come there minutes before Shabbos, and they say, "We're really sorry. We're on the road and we got stuck, and we're here for Shabbos. Is there any way we can stay in your house?" And he looks at them, and he sees kind of who they are, understands the situation. He says, "Sure, I charge, but sure, charge. What's going on?" "Yeah, I have a charge and whatever. It's $1,000 a person." Seriously, $1,000 a person. Look at each other. They're like, "We don't get a choice. You got minutes to Shabbos. I mean, where are we going to go? We need a place to sleep, to eat, the kosher. We'll do it. We'll do it." Okay. They were really kind of annoyed, very annoyed, but we'll do it. So they come and he shows them a beautiful house, a beautiful guest room. They get ready for Shabbos. And then they go to shul and they come back home from shul and they see a table set like they've never seen before. I mean, food galore. I mean, amazing, amazing Shabbos table. They look at each other and say, "Listen, they're kind of uncomfortable with like sitting down and eating. They're like very proud people. They're very, usually they're the ones hosting, but they said, listen, we paid for it. We paid for it. We might as well enjoy it. So they sat down and they started eating, and they were schmoozing with the guests, with the host. And they had a good time. They had a few l'chaim. It was a beautiful Friday night dinner. Then Shabbos day, the same thing. They go to shul, they come home. Lunch was a spread like I've never seen before. And again, they say, listen, we paid for it. We paid for it. We might as well enjoy it. So they had a wonderful, wonderful Shabbos. At the end of Shabbos, as they were getting ready to leave, the host comes back and says, here's your $2,000 back. So what do you mean? He says, I don't charge. Of course I'm not going to charge. But I saw how uncomfortable you were with coming to my house as a guest. I said, you know what? If I charge them, they'll feel comfortable. So I just did it to make you comfortable. I'm not going to charge you. Here's your money back.
Wow.
Right? So hosting is something, you need some creativity. But hosting is really about making them feel comfortable. What can I do to make them feel comfortable? They say the story with it was during COVID, the first Pesach of COVID, right? So COVID hit like weeks before Pesach, right? March or something, right? 2020, and then Pesach was like the first time people were very like disoriented. Don't know what's going on. Everyone was home. Everyone was quarantined, and it was Pesach that like many people had plans to be with family. Pesach time to go to family. I know personally, we had tickets. We got really cheap tickets on Delta. Instead of driving to Toronto, we were going to fly to Toronto. Really excited, and of course, we have to cancel those tickets. But for many of the elderly that usually there with their family, it was very difficult, as we all remember. So there was a particular elderly woman whose husband passed away a number of years before, and she was going to be Pesach with her children, her son and her grandchildren. Either she was going to fly to Israel, or they were going to fly here, but she was living somewhere in the States, and they were going to be together with her family. But Pesach came, they realized that they can't be together. So the son in Israel said, listen, you have a neighbor who basically, she lives in an apartment in one building, and the neighbor who lived in the other building, but their windows were not too far from each other. He says they said that they're happy to do their Seder right near their window, and you can do your Seder in your house near your window. And you go, and like this, you could kind of follow along. You could do the Seder together from different apartments. I said, okay, you know what's better than being alone. So that's what they did. So she prepared her little Seder, whatever, table next to the window of her apartment, and then the neighbors across the whatever the alleyway prepared their Seder with their family by their window, and they opened the windows and they did the Seder together. And after Pesach, or after, she calls her son back and she says, you don't believe it. Don't worry about me. It was an amazing Seder. Their family, does the same exact Seder as we did it. Every family has their types of, their songs that they sing and the things that they say and the way they do it. It's very, everyone has and it's exactly the way we did it. They sing the same songs and they say the same Torahs and everything exactly the way, my husband, your father did it. He led the Seder exactly the same way. I felt so much at home. It was an amazing, amazing experience. So what does the son say? He says, you have an amazing neighbor. But right before Pesach, he called me and he says, tell me exactly how your father led the Seder. And he wrote down all the songs and all the tunes and just everything, because they wanted to do the Seder exactly the way his mother was used to it, right? So it's not just about, I'm here to provide something that you're missing. I'm here to make you feel at home. That's what hosting is. And everyone with their own creativity, when we do host, how to make it happen. Sometimes it means taking a step back and kind of, here, do your thing, right? Feel yourself, make yourself at home. Sometimes it means some people need to be led into it, and but the point is, let people feel this is a home I'm comfortable in. I remember when I was in Israel, I went to my uncle's house. I walked into the kitchen. He says, Mendel, this is the kitchen. Here's the dairy. Here's the meat. Here's the refrigerator. Here's the pantry. Here's that. Make yourself at home. And he walked out. And to me, that was the best thing, because I always felt comfortable going to the pantry, seeing what they have to food. You walked out, make yourself at home. Find whatever you want. The pantries are full. The refrigerator is full. Right? Do your thing as if as if it's your own house, right? Sometimes even taking a step back is the way to make them comfortable. Some people, I need to be served. Okay, fine. So we'll serve you. We'll make sure you have everything that you need. But whatever it is, it's not just about giving them things. It's about making them feel comfortable and feeling at home. And like Lance pointed out, it really sometimes the small, subtle things that we do or say could bring out this idea, and sometimes or the opposite of it, right? So sometimes some people feel like, oh, maybe I overstayed my stay, right? I don't know if they're so happy with me and they're kind of waiting for me to leave. Do I sense that? Do I feel that from them, right? So when we accompany them to the door, it's not just like, oh, just go already, please go, right? We're done. God forbid. It's really about
Not like me.
it's really about I appreciate it and I enjoy every moment that you're in my house till the last moment. Like you're here, I'm gonna accompany you to the door. In other words, I'm happy that you were here. Come again, right? It's not so it's not like, hey, bye. Okay, great. We'll see you next time. And then I continue doing whatever I'm doing. No, I'm gonna be with you for as long as I could. So it's an extra few seconds, actually a few minutes. Walk you to the door, walk you to the car, walking down the block. Accompanying them is really indicative of how I felt all along that you were here. So that's what Maimonides says. Of course, you have to host properly. Of course, you have to do everything that Avram did and more, and make them feel comfortable. But it really, really comes to it's seen so much in how we send them off. Are we done with them, or we're hoping that we could be with them for every extra moment? And that small little things is felt by the guests. And it's a difference between charity, which meant most people don't want to receive charity if they don't have to, or hospitality. A very big difference. Charity is, I'm giving you what you need. So you need a place to stay, I gave you a place to stay. You needed breakfast, I gave you breakfast. That's charity. Most people don't want charity. If they're able to choose, I wouldn't. But hospitality, a good host makes someone feel comfortable. I'm happy you're here. This is your place, like it's my place. Make yourself at home, and that comes to is really seen how we end off with them, with accompanying them and escorting them out. Yeah.
So I just want to bring this up. So about 25 years ago, when I went to Rabbi Ness's house for the first time ever, and didn't know anything about Shabbat or Hasidus or anything.
For the class or
Yes,
yeah.
yeah. And well, yeah, one there. And because we messed up, but it was
Biscuit, yeah.
It was so ever exposed to Hasidus, leavening. So I remember that it like that's what stood out the most is that they both walked me to my car, and they hadn't ever really met before. And it just made I still picture them both smiles on their face walk me to my car. And ever since then, I made the point I have some people walk, even my closest friends. I still, even my brother, I walk them to their car.
It's beautiful. Wow. That's a beautiful. That's so beautiful. I mean, it's just to see how long how that first of all the ripple effect, and even 25 years later, it's still like
Have
stuck in
you
your
ever
mind.
told them?
Oh.
Hey, yeah. It's probably here. We're finishing up. You can come in. Yeah. Either here. Yeah.
Um,
Because you lectured me, so I'm lecturing you.
That's very nice. That's very nice. Yeah, yeah. Just to conclude with another amazing story that I probably told over here, but to me it's just an amazing story. But it's about not just about giving people what they need, but kind of putting yourselves into their shoes and seeing what what are they going through. And people point this out from Avram as well, because some people, so many people, sometimes we're so consumed within ourselves, in even in good things, right? We don't always notice other people, right? So Avram, we are told that God came to visit him, and you would think if God is visiting you, you're so consumed in that moment, which sometimes you say we should be present, right? He's present with God. Who would even notice another person, right? The fact that Avram even noticed three people walking is because he couldn't get past the of always thinking about another person, noticing someone else's needs. So sometimes we are told that we're so involved in ourselves, in our own family, in our own lives, in our own business, and we don't always even notice that there's someone that needs help. So kind of putting ourselves into other people's shoes and understand what they're going through. So there was a rebbe, I forget, it was a business rebbe or whatever, one of the Hasidic rebbes in Israel, who one of his Hasidim, who was a widower, his wife passed away a number of years before that, and his daughter was getting married. That was a big wedding. Of course, he has other family members that were helping him out. And he gets a message from the Rebbe secretary, that the Rebbe said that when you get home from the wedding, no matter what time it is, some weddings in Israel, a Hasidic wedding could go to 1 a.m., 2 a.m. No matter the time, the Rebbe wants you to call him. Call him at his home, his personal number. Okay, interesting. So they have the wedding. It's a beautiful wedding. The guests come, and the chuppah, and the music, and the food, and the flowers. A wonderful wedding. He gets home from the wedding. It is late. It's like 1:30, 2 a.m. But he remembers the Rebbe said he should call him. Okay, I'll call. He's hesitant a little bit. Wake up the Rebbe in the middle of the night. But he calls the Rebbe's house, and the Rebbe answers the phone. The Rebbe asks him, "How was the wedding?" "Oh, it was a nice wedding, thank God." "Who came to the wedding?" "No," he said, "This family member came, that family member." "Who from the community came?" And he started listing some of the names of people in the community. "How was the music?" "Oh, the music was very nice." "How was the food?" "Was it good food? Was there enough food?" "How were the waiters? How was the singer? How was the dancing? How was the flower?" Whatever. He started asking him all about the wedding. He schmoozed for about 20 minutes with the Rebbe, all about the wedding. The Rebbe said, "Mazel tov, Mazel tov, I'm so happy for you." Mazel tov, and hangs up. Very odd. So the secretary, who was kind of like overhearing this conversation, he asked the Rebbe, he says, "What's this all about?" He says, "You don't understand. He doesn't have a wife. He married his daughter. So what happens when people come home from a wedding? You come home from a wedding, you sit down on the couch before you fall asleep. You speak to your spouse about the wedding. So this person came, this person said this, and how was the food and the dancing and the music. You just talk about the wedding. He's coming home to an empty house. He has no one to talk to. It was a beautiful wedding. But just to give him that, dignity of having the opportunity just to talk to someone, just as husband and wife, to speak to each other. So I wanted to be that, be that person. So he made the conversation. Thinking about another person, not just like fill a void, but thinking about what they're going through is really what the mitzvah is all about. So I'll leave you with that, and have a Shavua Tov, have a good week, and hope to see you next week for our next Parsha class. Quick announcement.